the brick streets that we had open that we were going to discuss?
I don't think so.
Does anybody have any other recollections?
Well, I think we were talking about how we would go about
Right.
down that road. So now that our illustrious public works director is here, so let's talk about this. Can I set up the conversation here? Or we get them
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so we had a lot of debate about how you would go about fixing the bricks. So Mr. Valchef illustrated that, we got 8 miles of streets, brick streets that need some care. You've mentioned in the past that you thought maybe a viable option would be bringing in a contractor to do the spot repairs and to sort of catch up on the maintenance. Eric's suggestion was, hey, let's build our own in-house capacity, whether it is, acquiring the right equipment, personnel, basically adding a staff person to your team, and then, setting them down the course of, throughout the year, doing the repairs. So basically we've got the in-house solution versus the, contracting out, and if you contract it out, I think we can use the road fund. If we do it in-house, the only thing you'd be able to use is you'd be able to expense the materials, and the labor would come out of the general fund, unless we adjusted the road fund and, put the mill, some of the funds towards public works, so you'd have the money in your budget.
It would just never come out of the road fund for personnel, just to be.
Right,
Right,
and that's what I think he's.
Right.
Okay.
Right,
So-
yeah, we'd
It was
have
making
to
that
adjust the
decision.
road fund lower and reallocate that revenue towards your department. So, question is, in your years of experience, one, I wanna know, how do you feel about doing spot repairs? It doesn't matter, in-house, contract, is a viable option? Two, what model would you want to follow?
So I think they've prepared, from what I understand, a very nice presentation for
Awesome.
us.
Well, I mean,
So,
Yeah, so I think, just to kind of summarize, point number one is Rob is gonna just discuss in general, what the labor goes into, whether it's spot repair or re-bricking, we're doing a more expanded renovation of, any brick street. And then from there, we can talk about, like you said, how could that fit into the road program in general, because there's nothing that precludes us from using the road fund to, contract any sort of brick repair, if that's the direction to go in versus, Rob's view on personnel, labor, what goes into it, and then we can talk about
okay.
brick streets map.
All right,
So,
so basically, what we need to keep in mind is we will not have a quorum at 9 o'clock tonight.
okay,
All
Rob,
right?
why don't you tee up on the labor?
okay, the biggest part of the brick street repair is, it's very labor intensive. I've been preaching probably since I've been here about some type of program. I mean, City of Pittsburgh, we have a brick and block program where there's funding that's actually set aside to do brick and block repair. It's labor intensive, so most of that, even in the City of Pittsburgh, is contracted out. I got a list here that I used, and I think I shared this with council, from 2015, the brick and concrete streets in the borough. We had approximately, I think, 8.36 miles of brick streets. And the Pacer system that used to evaluate them in 2015, 8 of the streets are listed too, with one being the poorest condition you can have. The rest of the streets are rated between a 3 and a 4. So those road conditions aren't conducive to repairs. You can do spot repairs, puddle in front of your house, you can do it, repair it. But the only problem is there, you do that, you're playing hopscotch. And really, what I guess we should be doing more proactively is responding to requests for services. But since I've been here in 2014, brick street repairs from property owners. Other than at Belvedere, South Grandview, we did, I wouldn't call it a brick repair, but we did some modifications on Bar in West Crafton Avenue. They have been few and far between people requesting us to do brick repairs themselves. I guess they realize the condition of the street, that they need to be completely redone.
I don't think they realize that. I think they don't realize that they can be calling that in.
But you're really putting the Band-Aid on the bleeder. I think like Belvedere Street itself, in order for that to be done right, redone, it's approximately, my calculations, about $492,000 to do all of Belvedere Street. And I preached to the council before and said that we should take maybe a portion of the road fund and do a 5-year plan. Belvedere, you get a brand new street in 5 years, the brick are done. It's no burden on our workforce. As our work is continuing to expand with whether it be tree prunings, removals, and assisting the contractor is doing our fair share with tree removal. But I think really, the condition of the streets right now, you need to do more
So, Rob,
reconstruction than.
why don't you give a little bit of information about what has been on the table is hiring a laborer and getting a truck to put towards brick repair. What would it take from the workforce to do brick repair?
I'll compare it to what we do with asphalt. I mean, asphalt, we did those 6 street segments. I think the contracted cost was approximately $365,000 to reconstruct those alleys that we did. It cost the borough approximately $49,000 in material and labor for us to do that. So you're saving $310,000.
Isn't that interesting that that's equivalent to what we pay Gateway for then, as a percentage of the road program?
Well, it's actually
That's
10%,
interesting, isn't it?
but it's 10% of the road programs with the engineers.
Hmm.
Okay. They're-
I mean, it's just however much the
Yeah.
engineering ends up
And,
budgeting.
and this was a new program with the paver, that actually paid for itself with us using it. And the guys
Yeah.
took a little training, a little experience to get used to that. Same token, next year if we do when we do the in-house paving program, we complete that list, we could use that same crew to do brick repair. We can do an extensive brick repair, but you can't do both the asphalt and the brick at the same time.
So
because
how much would you get done on each type of program with, let's say, 2 weeks? What do you get done with the paper versus with the brick guys?
Paver with weather and everything going right. don't give me
Ideal
breakdowns.
conditions, let's say that.
2 weeks we would have had milling, base work, 2 of the street segments completed within 2 weeks that we did.
So how much distance would that be?
The distance, I don't have the calculations with me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have the footage with
So
me.
you're talking about two alleys?
The 2 street segments would be 1 complete alley.
Those are really lengthy
So,
alleys. I mean, some of those alleys are longer
I
than our actual
apologize, I didn't
streets.
say
Off the top of our head, I don't know these, but you know.
The brick repairs, what happens with that, it's gonna be
each segment's
extensive
about
base work.
$50,000
It's gonna be
worth.
extensive base work. Can we do it? Sure. These guys have done brick street repairs. I mean, I was a bricklayer at the city for 4 years. You don't need a bricklayer to put brick streets in. You need a bricklayer to do structures, buildings, fountains. It's not that there's a skill that these guys have done it, the older guys have done it, and I've done it. There's been enough experience on the in-house crew to do it, but it's so labor intensive. It's when we get the chance to do it, when do we do it?
So in 2 weeks, how much, let's say, Belvedere would you get done bricklaying?
I would say, just an estimated guesstimate, probably about 2 weeks, probably about 100 feet,
Okay.
approximately. I'm gonna guesstimate, depending on what you run into.
Well, and when we're talking repair, are we talking like redoing the subsurface?
Yes, you could, there's no way to fix a brick street, these brick streets without doing any of the base work.
Okay.
Every one of them has been, that's why you have the condition you have.
So if, let's say for comparison, we take, so the estimated cost that we talked about at the last budget workshop was, you know, maybe with benefits and all that for one employee, 80,000 plus, you know, another truck payment, we're looking at between 100, 120, to round off 120, about 100,000 per year, let's just say. How much could you, well, let's just use it because it's an easy number for now. For 100,000 of contracted brick repair, what could you get done?
Belvedere, I think, is almost 1,400 feet. If you break it down, it's 100 grand over 5 years, so you'd probably do 1/5 of that.
Which is more than 100 feet?
Well, I would have, what's it, Oh, yeah.
Just like,
Calculate.
Just under 300 feet.
for the record, which is like, we're saying 100 feet or more, is it more or less in the same amount of money?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the, what we're trying to
So wait,
tease out.
You're saying 100,000 would get us how many?
About 300 feet, is that what
Well,
what you're saying?
I guess what we're not talking about is apples and apples. We're talking about apples and street paving. What I'm
No,
saying.
we're not. I don't think so.
No, no.
We're not talking about
Brick
brick.
paving.
We're talking about a
All
contractor to do
brick,
brick.
but street paving.
Right.
What he's referring to is end to end, from side to side, gutter to gutter, replacing all the brick and the surface underneath. What I'm talking about is, there is, I drove down Division, I walked down several of the streets, on, I think it was Division Street, I counted 22 potholes. 22 potholes. I'm not talking about the street. I'm talking about the worst offenders around the town. Triaging a list of, maybe it's 464, I don't know what the number is, potholes. I'm not talking about side to side, all of it. And I understand that is, your words were a Band-Aid on a pleater. I don't disagree with that statement, but what I'm saying is, these are things that can be dealt with, because otherwise, we're carrying on. There has been no work on these streets, in some cases,
Okay.
more than 50 years.
So I'm going to call this right now. We're down to 15 minutes to the point where we will not have a quorum.
Mhm.
And I think that the point here is, that's being made, is that we want something to happen dedicated to repairing the worst potholes and potentially an actual program, and we are here at a budget meeting. So I think that what we have to do, if we're going to get a budget passed before the end of the year, we need to put some numbers in, we need to pass a preliminary budget so that we can advertise it. We've got 15 minutes to do this.
so can I make a recommendation?
Please.
My recommendation is that we have a line item under the road fund, and probably help me out here.
Yeah, what it would,
Just, so we sequester $100,000 next year out of the road program to deal with the break.
I think that's a great idea.
All right, and then, I'm
Honestly.
gonna blow your mind here on this. I made a comment, and I'm not kidding, do we really need to have Gateway do the road program? Or can you do that, Rob? And can we save the $50,000? So we might,
The biggest issue probably that I'm gonna be concerned more than anything is doing the daily inspections.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to count trucks, make sure the loads are there. You have to, there's a little more detail in the daily inspections. And let's face it, they're only here for 2 weeks.
well, can we get you, you mentioned, maybe bringing in a consultant or another consultant to sort of work with us on the road program. I view Gateway as a very competent engineer when it comes to the sewer situation. But when it comes to the road program, listening to the discussions over the past almost 7 years, I think it may give you, if we give you the opportunity to work with the people that you choose on the road program, maybe we'd have some better luck. And again, this is not to besmirch Gateway engineers, but somebody that drive the road program and drive the contractor, to do
So
the inspections
basically, okay,
on
so-
the road program.
Let me ask a question. The Gateway part now comes out of the road program, is that correct?
yep,
Yep.
Okay,
it's just an
So-
engineering line item.
okay, so it's an engineering line item
Yeah.
that represents about 50,000.
10% of the road program.
That's
Okay,
right.
10%. So we don't necessarily have to resolve exactly what we're gonna do. I think you've made a credible suggestion. Rob, do you have
Something we
any
can
initial-
explore, I think we can explore that option.
So that we
Look
may
at
be
it.
able to save some more money there and put a little bit more towards maybe some of what Eric is suggesting is the patching
We could
in
do
the
the
areas where it's gonna be 5 years.
22 potholes, regardless, if somebody called up, like Granby was a pothole, somebody called up, and then we not repatched it. You know, we took it out, fixed the area, compacted material. That's, and I'm sorry, but most of it was like complaint driven. I think they called, come on, look at a dip on the road and we can fix it. That's, I mean, and that's something that we can do on.
So we could survey
We could
that.
do the road, just real quick, we could do the road program. I'm excited about that, doing the brick reconstruction coming out of the road program with 100, whatever determined by council. And we could do the patching too. If you give me a list of 22 potholes that need patched, we could start and get those
So
done.
we could
Even this
survey
time
that.
of year, you could do brickwork.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure,
This
I mean,
time of
that's,
year we can
and
do
now that we
brickwork.
have some actual asset
Last year,
management software.
We had 2 snow
Okay.
events.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
think
that we can start bringing this capacity
Yeah.
in-house when it comes to the road program.
Let me
Okay.
just,
Try to get the resources.
If
Not saying that we're not gonna
I
coordinate with
may-
our municipal engineer.
if I
Okay, hold
may,
on,
just
manager suggests.
want to provide a little bit of information or a way to sort of frame this, because I think that, you know, Rob, I know you've been saying it before, you said it before to me, you've probably been saying it for
Okay,
years.
just come to the point,
Okay.
we're running out of
I
time.
think that it would be a good idea if we were to establish as a regular practice that we include brick street repair, whether it's
Okay,
potholes or
I think
whatever,
we're all
as the
agreed
road
on that.
program.
All right,
going
so I
forward.
believe we have a proposal that says, let's earmark 100 grand of the road program.
Right.
So that's official thing that we need to do on the budget. Has anybody got any objections to that as a first step? Eric? No? Okay. And that we have a commitment to look at how we might start to bring the required engineering for the road
Maybe you
program
doing the bid specs or something.
in-house, a different, different consulting, some way to save some money there, and also that we're making a commitment with the budget that we have to do some survey of the brick potholes and list them out and work towards in-house repairs
Yep.
on those, because it will be a number of
That's-
years.
Not gonna be a budgetary impact doing the potholes.
No.
Okay,
That's
so
just labor.
basically, the main thing that we need to do, but
If we had another FTE in your crew, would we be able to get more of that banged out faster?
I think what would,
I mean, is one guy gonna lay the brick hand by hand himself? That's the
Start-
No,
question.
here's the deal, I mean, to me, the cost benefit ratio is, no.
Well, the
What
other
we
thing
did-
that's more important at this point, if I can point out, is do we have the stomach? Because if we're going to do that, that means another $100,000 in our budget this year.
I'd rather see that go to 200,000 into the road program for somebody to come in and do a road repair. That extra guy. I tell you
Well,
what we
there's
did.
other things in our toolkit that we can
Yeah.
explore, and I mentioned it earlier in the year. There's other things that we can do to figure out how to pay for this. All right, we got 8 miles that need attention, and there's all types of green infrastructure, pervious pavers, different things that we can do. We can get creative on this, and if we're going to enlist the engineer in that, then I would much rather pay the engineer to figure out a creative solution, how to improve that impervious surface, to use the technology currently available to us, but preserve the character and the aesthetic that makes Crafton Crafton. So, and we have the Three Rivers wet weather conference coming up. I would urge that one of
So
our
that-
staff members go to that, because that's where you see the new technology.
Right, so basically, that all of this is side discussion. There's making a commitment to doing something to work on the brick streets, and a commitment to get spot repairs done. And it appears that the one thing that we need to do right now to finish off everything else that we've done with the budget is to make a specific earmark. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's we can talk more But the money, the amount of money being allocated to the budget at this time is the same, it's just earmarking it for brick stuff. So at this point, you're okay to motion to advertise that budget.
Okay, well, the question is, do we have an agreement
Do you need a motion to advertise the budget?
Well, we're gonna need that within the next 7 minutes, yes. So I just wanna make sure if we're all okay with just the allocating of the 100,000 as the starting point and the commitment to keep going with this discussion and to find creative ways to get more done.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm
Okay.
asking him if he needs more
See,
bottles.
right.
Just real quick, I know you got 6 minutes. What we did this past year,
Sorry.
Why don't we just make the motion and then have this whole discussion?
Okay,
Sorry.
no,
Motion to advertise the
we
budget.
get the budget.
Before we can't have.
Do I have a
vote.
second a motion to advertise the budget?
Well-
It's a preliminary budget. We can,
Correct. Yep,
Still have
second.
Terrific.
okay. Everybody's seconding. Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay, I wanted to, talk about some things that we need to do at the parks and the parklets.
Okay, so basically, okay, let me clarify.
Okay.
We are making a motion to advertise the budget. We have more time to make more adjustments before we have public input. Is that, I'm correct in that? We discussed that earlier?
Yeah.
So all we're saying right now is we have a motion to advertise a preliminary budget. And that is not closing it.
Yeah, and what I think Marcia,
And we can continue after Philip leaves to talk about what you're suggesting.
Because this is, the sale on this play stuff is at the end of December and it's it.
Okay, so just, well, and that's, so then that's not even for the 2020 budget then. So let's, well, you said it's, okay. So the motion on the table is to advertise a preliminary budget. And we have to have a quorum. We already have a majority, but I want to respect your no, but I want to make sure that you understand, that's all.
can I ask you a question? I think your concern is that you'd like to make sure that the manager and public works director see that there are items that are of value and on sale that could, I mean, obviously they're not gonna hit this year's, they're not gonna probably be invoiced this year, they probably hit the 2020. They could be bought at a discount right now, probably go against the 2020 budget. It sounds like you guys have a bunch of ideas on how to improve the parks.
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 grants that we.
Right. So there's revenue, there will be funds available, so I think what.
For projects that
so-
have been already. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
here's what I've got.
So really, this is like a procurement.
Right. So
Yeah.
basically, we have a 4-1 or a 4-1 vote for advertising the budget at this point.
Right.
Okay? So that
To clarify,
motion,
You're against advertising the budget?
Yeah, I want some more things done in the park. I want the park, we
Okay,
haven't
so-
been touched for 20 years.
all right, Marcia, at this point, motion passes. Now let's go over to you, Marcia, and continue your conversation. So that means we have a majority that will advertise, so let's continue the discussion right now to talk about what your concerns and, as you say, procurement. All right?
I just want to see something put into the parklets. It's been 20 years.
So what
That was put
specifically
in.
would you like to see and how would you like to have it happen?
Something like this happened.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think, especially with knowing that the school district had to unfortunately close some of the playgrounds.
So have you got some
And now that there's
prices? Do you know
some
what these things
funding,
will
maybe
cost?
you guys can consider it.
Okay, all
You know
right.
what, too, Marcia, I'll take a look at that, but we already bought there's 3 new pieces of play equipment going in this spring. There's
Who bought them?
The borough?
We did.
Oh, okay. Nothing came across here saying that it was.
It was.
We have a budget, and
Yeah,
if it's within the
Well-
budget, all right, so
Oh, okay,
let's,
so,
okay,
And
so,
again-
so let's talk about what is coming, let's talk about what you want, let's talk about how much it is, and let's figure out,
Before we do anything else, let's all say bye, Phil.
Hi, Phil.
bye, Phil.
I actually paid from the rec board, make those streets and
they did, yeah.
So, okay, so you're saying basically the rec board made a recommendation,
Yeah,
picked it out,
we're just installing it. We didn't.
and they're installing it.
Rec board, the one.
Okay, so you're,
Hooray!
hooray, yeah, it's wonderful, but it would have been nice to know
okay, so that
that they
doesn't
were
mean,
doing all this. Did you know they were doing this?
I heard from Miss Mary that there was something, but I don't recall it being something we talked about in
okay,
any
so
sort of.
what's releases and where are they going? So let's
Yeah.
start with that,
We-
and then
we-
let's go.
We bought 2 spring, bouncy horse, whatever you wanna call them, and a teacup spinner for Noble Park.
Oh, yeah, I remember
My-
talking
Yes,
about
we
that.
My-
did talk about it.
Alice, are you gonna hang?
They're buying, I'm just hearing, people move away from the microphone and then you can't hear. It's talk to the other side of the room. Just talking to the microphone, please.
You know what, Alice, and there was some people with Phil leaving, there was some commotion, so you had some ambient noise, but we're back. So,
All right,
my-
so can we get an outline of what the Parks Committee chose and where it's going?
They chose 2 spring bouncy horse things, I don't know what they're called, bouncy creatures. 2 of them for Noble Park, and a teacup shaped spinner
Spinner for the other one?
for Noble Park.
Okay, Noble
We're
Park.
looking at, apparently one of the bouncy horses in Linwood Park just broke, so we will most likely be replacing that
Okay, and all
in
of
the
that
spring.
is being purchased under the auspices of the 2019
Has
budget?
been purchased.
Yes, has
We
been
have
purchased
received the
Under
equipment.
the auspices of the 2019 budget?
Yes.
And was there any grant money
Can you
involved?
clarify what you
No,
just
it
said?
was so inexpensive, it did not require a grant.
You're looking at it, but you already purchased it?
No,
No.
hang on, let me see if I can find the.
Is that
So
what I heard
earlier, no,
Meeting we
earlier in
discussed
the
this
year, Parks and Rec made some choices,
Mm-hmm.
and the purchases have been made,
Yes.
and
What
those
are you doing?
purchases were made in
For
the
Noble.
2019 for Noble.
Yes.
But
As-
nothing for Linwood, so you're
Yes.
looking at,
No, there was Linwood purchased a horse, springy
Yeah,
horse.
we need to get one more
Springy horse.
springy horse since one.
So 20
so there were
years, one
some
thing-
purchases, wait.
Three.
So there were some purchases also made for Linwood, but there should be more to complete it, is that what you're saying?
Yes, the good news is that we have received $375,000 of grant money for 2020, which has lapped the field for the entire history of our rec
Right.
investments. So
That's-
that will all be coming to bear.
To be honest
So,
with you,
but mostly
So-
that is
To-
earmarked for playground surface, right?
Playground surfaces for Crafton Park, Linwood Park, and
That's huge.
then the pool liner replacement, doing the fence also in Noble Park, since the fence is kind of seen
There's no
better
fence.
days.
Okay,
You know, I mean, there's like
So-
That's one
there's
section.
a
Stick a tweak that's.
single.
So
thing.
now Marcia has some
some
additional
additional stuff
structures.
she would like to see happen,
And can I ask a question then?
please.
In the 2019 budget, have you drawn down everything that's available for those purchases? Because what she's saying is she has some things that are on sale that if encumbered before the end of the year, you can take advantage of a fairly steep discount.
I mean, I'll be honest, I have not heard from somebody else that
Okay,
would like.
so let's
things
have
like
Marcia, let's
You-
have
I
Marcia
gave you
make her
this book.
presentation.
With these in.
You know-
Yes,
you know
I
what you
have
could
not
do?
heard
You
from
could
another person that we need
Purchase
to
those in
replace in
December.
place, is what I'm saying.
Get the
Okay,
discount.
so-
That is
You
something
won't get
for
one.
sure.
Marcia, let's
Discussion.
listen to Marcia,
I do that
please.
with salt.
Marcia, would you please make your presentation about what you would like to see and what it's gonna
And
cost?
I talked to you months ago on it.
Yes.
How much has been purchased in the parks in the last 20 years?
Let's not even
Okay.
worry about what's
Where-
happened in the
where has-
past, let's talk about what you want
Okay,
now
Where
and what
has
it's
the
gonna
money
cost.
gone that should have been put into the parks?
We have no idea.
That's,
Because we've been here, I've been here for 4 years this time, only 4 years. You have benefit of having been on council before, and you've been here for 4 years, okay? Relatively new, so if you're asking us to look at the history, we can look at the history and give you a report about, as far as we can go back, what has been spent on the parks. We can do that. But I think what's more important to you, Marcia, right now, is to see something else new happen. So could you please tell us what you would like and what it's gonna cost?
what are these sets to go in on each Linwood and
Okay, do you have some prices? Have you talked to anyone?
RJ?
Yes, I think the one play place on sale was about 20,000 the last time that we spoke.
Okay, so we have this at 8,000?
That is new.
No, that was in the book. Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay, I will be honest, I did not page through every
Okay,
single piece
so what you're
of the
making,
playground.
do you have,
I'll tell you what, the main
So
part
here's,
with.
okay, here's, yes, the one at the bottom, $21,984 is probably what I was looking at.
okay, so you're saying either one of these. So if we look at this, we have an $8,000 purchase,
Yes.
But in the
and you want one
parklets.
for each of the parklets?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Rob,
so
do we have one?
we have a proposal on the table to find a way to purchase. Now, is there something like this in the parklets? I have to say, I haven't used these parklets,
No.
so there's nothing like this. Is
There's
there
not
room
like
for
this.
something like this?
You're going to be putting down a new surface.
Uh-huh,
My question would be, if you're putting down a new surface, these things are anchored.
uh-huh.
So it would seem, you can be the engineer for a minute, Rob. You would
Yeah.
probably want to put these in the ground before you put the surface, the plugs in the ground before you put the surface in. So for the park that's getting the new surface, without having any sort of play structure on said surface, you're just putting a rubber mat down in the forest.
Well, what we're doing, it's a little more extensive. It's actually it's 2 by 2 squares, approximately 4 inches thick, but it's all new base work.
Yeah.
Right, right.
No, but what I'm
About
saying
that.
is, you're gonna have a rubber mat down with nothing to fall
Well,
onto.
I think
So
the
this
fall
is the
from,
structure that they would be playing on,
No.
to potentially fall on. too.
Actually, the safety surface is going to run existing play equipment that's in the main
Okay, so
part.
then
So
are we
that's
saying,
what Colette's
would this,
question is.
okay, so would this require more surface to be purchased if we put something like this
Is-
in?
I probably wouldn't have to go over Linwood's
And we have-
most
we want
likely.
one
do we have
involved.
room for this in Linwood? is the
Something
question.
probably would have to come out if you wanted to do that in Linwood.
Well, I guess my question,
Okay, something existing would have to come out if we put something like this in, because there's not enough room in the parklet? Is that what I'm
In
hearing?
Linwood's.
Okay,
fine.
so Marcia, in Linwood, what should we remove? Did we hear that we had a bouncy horse
That's,
that's
Right,
broken?
it did.
Okay, so that's something that's
Linwood's
gone?
their smallest neighborhood park. is Linwood.
Okay, so this is, we don't know the size. So Marcia, in your experience, what else do you think would have to come out to have room for this in Linwood?
so, right now, there's a brand-new slide in Linwood Park, or a classic slide
Yeah,
in Linwood Park, and
Yeah.
there's a swing set,
right, and a bouncy horse.
and a bouncy horse.
So we could take the
So,
bouncy, the
it's
bouncy
small.
horse.
So
and
how
we could-
large is the, not this, how large is the rubberized surface tiles that are going in, roughly speaking?
I can look it
20
up.
by 20, maybe?
And this is 30,
I'm
this,
not prepared for this.
the area is 32 by 30, essentially. It's a little bit, a few inches off of
Sure,
this.
sure.
But it says the area is 32 by 30, let's call it
Okay,
that.
I will pull
And
up
is
the
that the
grant
actual-
application.
I know nothing about these kinds of specs, Rob, but is this the actual area that it takes up, and we have to have a larger area around this?
Yeah, you need a fall area around it.
Right, so the fall area would typically be,
4 foot fall area all the way
okay,
around.
so we would have to have 32, 36 by 34 feet to cover this.
It'd be, you'd probably you'd lose everything in Linwood.
So,
I'm
is
looking
there
at it now.
another
There's a
book
big-
that we could
there's
put
a
something
large space
smaller?
that's there, so.
There's a large
Yeah, there
space.
is a large space that's there right now. It's a little bit hazy on the map, but you can kind of see that the swing set is over here. I zoomed in too much.
You have a
Yes.
book, is there
But
like
over
something
here, there's
smaller?
nothing but space. The swings is over.
If they say,
Maybe get a couple,
Yeah.
structures.
Yeah.
Most important though is that safety service. That's, your
So
Marcia.
which, by the
But I'm
way,
saying,
one
you have a
thing,
safety surface and nothing to play on.
well,
Right, well,
I mean,
you only put it around the play area, play
Right.
equipment.
yeah,
Right.
and which, by the way, the tiles are made so that you can pop them in and out to install
these are
things,
beautiful.
so,
You drill them.
whereas if we put something in before the tiles are done, we might spend time and money installing it onto a base and then just pulling it out.
yeah, this
No.
is roughly the same, it's not that much different.
I'm-
These are some of the smaller
Have
pieces.
we ever considered, like, Crafton Kickstarter? Like saying, hey, we have $6,000 left in our budget, community, and these are $21,000 to buy, or whatever the number is.
Well,
right?
we did raise, I
So-
think, $50,000 for the Pull Together Fund, so there was that, this
Okay,
is
so you're
news to
suggesting
me.
this,
I have not had
for Linwood,
conversations
actually it's a little-
with
a few
the
dollars more,
families I know
But
with
see
the kids,
how it takes
asking
up
for
less
new
room?
platelets, so this is.
would that be suitable?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Um,
All right, so,
But if
Well,
I,
nothing for the
I will
park.
find the
Pardon?
grant
The deal was
application,
when they tore down the playscape, that they would add something every year, and that hasn't happened.
and when they did that, when they tore down the playscape, when was
I don't
that?
know, 20 years ago I was 9.
Ah, 6, 7 years maybe now,
Yeah, since before you and I were on council this time.
Yep.
All right.
What do you do with landscape?
And to be fair, you've been saying this every year, all right. So here is an item that's about this, that's a little bit smaller in area, about the same price.
Can the rec group that made the recommendations for the other things,
Be part of
Yeah.
this.
maybe be asked to look
Yeah.
at?
Oh,
That
absolutely.
would be a good idea.
Would that, then we don't have to worry about
Their
it.
charge is
They
to
can
equip
come back
the
and make
parks
a
and recreation
recommendation.
areas.
If you can expose to them what kind of budget is left, and what I'm suggesting is maybe publishing out there that, hey, if the community, here it is charitably giving time of year, if the community wants to drop off a check in RJ's name, or maybe otherwise.
No, not my name, thank you. Please not my name.
No,
But you know what I'm saying,
I'll be
like
coming back here and
something,
people will be asking me if I've committed fraud, so.
I agree with Marcia's view on the parks, though. I think you need upgrades and you need to give them some love. But the most important thing to me was that safety service,
Good
getting
news
that
is we've
grant.
got $500,000
Why
coming
put
in.
all that down when there's only 3 things in the park? That's
Well,
just-
no, I mean,
Okay.
it's safety surface, it's not, it's just to keep the kids safe from falling and tripping, accidents and
So-
occurs, instead of us paying $15,000.
So just a refresher, we can
Kids
get,
kicked around.
we don't have anything, so we're talking about putting Linwood, which I think from what I've come to understand is the more used or the more important,
Well-
that's what we're putting the surface down on?
I mean,
It's probably the oldest, smallest.
it's located in the area in which a lot of younger families are moving.
yeah, I would not say that one is more important.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I just
Let me
said it on
correct you.
camera, I'm sorry to anybody who uses the other
Didn't
one.
mean
I-
it.
No,
When I was on
and I agree.
council, we did the same thing for Linwood as we did for,
Right.
No,
But
Right.
because Linwood is getting the safety surface, it stands to reason that you would want to have more stuff to play on right now, if that's what's getting the investment. And then Noble would be behind that as next up in the batting order. But it sounds like Noble is already getting some stuff that's been slated for this year
That
as
was,
well.
yeah, that was, well, yeah,
I
that was
agree,
the
you know,
request
rec
of
board
the
should be
rec.
involved in.
Yeah, they should pick this,
Well, they
it
should've,
shouldn't
like,
be
let us-
incumbent upon us.
let us know what they were getting
Charge.
before it was ordered.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think that,
Shops.
I think-
It was on a bill list,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, so,
Well, what's
We
on the
have-
list in June?
So, okay, RJ?
August
So we're-
was one.
and what are we doing for the regular part? Nothing new goes in there?
I'm sorry, wait, the
Main park.
The main park, we received a $175,000 grant to put a safety surface into the main park.
But no
playground.
more, you didn't add on to,
to the two play places that are there.
No, to,
There's no new equipment that has been budgeted for 2020 in the
Well,
main park.
2019.
the rec board still has the capital budget that can be expended, the funds for the house tour, they request that we put those towards playground equipment, which is, for example, where the little bouncy horse and the teacup spinner came from. The next request that they've got coming up is a little, bigger merry-go-round spinner thing for the main park.
Oh.
Once the surface is installed,
So
and
there you
that's
go.
about $4,000,
So there is, well,
which
so I
fits
was,
into the remaining
you're correcting
capital
me, I was
budget.
wrong. There is new equipment going into the
I
main
mean,
park.
that's the request. We're
That has
also
been
looking
requested.
at potentially a $2,000 sunshade over the one play place that we do actually get complaints of it heating up in the summer. That's, just a simple purchase in the 2020 budget, and there's already room for that in there. The main investment
So
is,
to answer Marcia's question, yes, there are, beyond the safety surface, at the main park, there are equipment improvements that are in consideration and on the way.
yeah,
That's good, right?
those are easy purchases, and I mean, those are direct requests from the rec board, so.
So, you said there is some budget, and the house tour will also bring more money in.
Well, right, but I mean, that impacts next year. That's, yeah.
But technically, it will be in our coffers before the end of the year, if this is,
The
So here's my
line item has
question.
been spent.
here's my question. Can we talk to the rec board about this specific thing for Linwood?
Sure.
With what's left and whether it will fit
Yeah,
with the amount of play surface we have.
It looks a little unique, it's like almost like a fish pole.
Okay,
it
so,
can't be graded and straightened out and leveled.
We'll do some,
The
they
third
put the
row.
base work.
So, okay, our takeaway here, Marcia, is that we are going to work with the rec board and have back by the next meeting? When is the rec board meeting again?
It was tonight.
It's fine, they don't really have a quorum anyway, since so many people have resigned or their terms have expired, so I guess we'll just contact the individual members.
Where are you getting all this?
You guys.
We had a
have-
quorum tonight,
There's, okay,
and all
Excuse
this
me if
rec
I
stuff has
misspoke.
gone from Mary Luxbacher and your
There's
meetings in your
Mary-
office,
there's
not through the
Mary,
rec board.
Mary, you, Wayne, Angela, Liz. Is there anyone else?
Roy?
Roy's term has expired and he
He's
explicitly
not
told me
anymore.
he did not want to re-up.
Linda Braden, and who else? is
That's
it?
right, there's Linda, I apologize, I misspoke. So there are 5 out of the 9 seats filled. You do
Great.
have a quorum. However, I would recommend that we appoint the other 4 seats when somebody applies, since we now have 9.
Absolutely.
This time, I mean,
Yep.
I mean, more
Well,
like,
I
would
mean,
be great if the main park, I just look at that today, actually, I thought it was the old parking, now look at this, because you had that section over here, I guess it was designed by Jenny Beachy designed it, for, I guess, for younger kids, and this side here was for older kids, and there's a massive gap in the middle, I mean, it's like. we would put it
At the main
right-
park?
Yes,
That was probably part of some larger plan,
yes, that was.
but that's where they
But
want
that's-
to put the
there's-
merry-go-round.
there's
So what Marcia's referring to, and I haven't lived here for only 15 years, but I can tell you that there has been plenty of talk over the years that there were supposed to be, in the old playscape or whatever, there was supposed to be a set-aside designated fund that was the maintenance and upkeep of that, and that was, no one knew anything about it, but it was allegedly there. One of those great urban myths, legends, or facts that were misplaced underneath the coffee
There is
filter.
no paper trail.
The reality is, as you said, it's in a drawer somewhere, or it doesn't exist, or something, we just don't know. So the fact of the matter is, going forward from that, something similar, when they first got this to do the new equipment on that park, there was some sort of a plan. I remember hearing about it, and I'm sure that people don't just make that stuff up, it's too weird to. That there was some sort of a plan or design that these were the initial pieces and that more would be added to it over time. And when you look at it, as you said, it looks like there's some gaps in there that somebody was thinking about something. So, yes, absolutely. So, we don't have insight, we don't have a rear view.
It's not, and it's
So
not a
we're-
major expense to put a piece of play equipment on a regular, like once a year or whatever.
So
No,
do you
that's
have-
why
do
we
you
added
have
the
this-
capital parks budget for the first time in
There you go.
2019.
Yep,
Do you have a copy of this?
Yes, Marcia did give me a copy of the booklet.
I put the park specs, too. I got all the park specs online, I'll send it.
Yeah,
We get the.
So this is the one that's on.
that's fine.
I'll send the park study.
Yeah, yeah. So all this is gonna have
I've
to
been
be
time
certified.
9:30.
Yep.
oh, I've been asleep for 20 minutes.
Okay. So, all right, can we, all right, just as a closing thing, so we can all go home, what Marcia is asking, and what I'm asking, is can we look at what do we have in the budget, and whether there is at least one piece that we can get out of this budget, an additional piece for, if it's Linwood that's gonna have the play surface, it seems to make sense. And,
Eventually.
Pardon?
No, it's just gonna come eventually, fix.
okay. And I don't even recall what we have, can you tell us what we have in the 2020 budget?
Oh, I have to look, hang on.
Getting pretty good at this. I didn't even bring it.
Eric, you have it in front of you, please give us a.
Marcia, do you recall what's in the,
420 something, is that right?
No, it'd be in the 450s.
you got the number, you can just call it out.
3,000, park equipment, capital improvements, 3,000, minor equipment, 1,000.
7. It's
So we
good.
got
That's
7,000,
7.
but clearly
That's
that doesn't
repairs.
go very far.
Maintenance and repairs.
That's capital
I mean,
improvements.
It's, that's, I believe that typically is set from how much the house tour usually takes.
$3,419.
So why are we
Yeah.
dependent
not-
only
that's
on the
not-
house tour?
That's not even, wait, that's not, hang on. Capital improvements. Oh, well, there's 17,000 in the capital improvements for parks line, but most of that was because the Shade Tree Commission had requested that we take care of a bunch of the trees
Okay, wait a
down
minute,
there.
so in 452, shade
72.
tree request for park tree maintenance.
Yeah, we discussed this at the last workshop, actually.
Okay, so this one, 454.75.
That is the one that's typically been set on the rec fundraising, because prior to 2019, there wasn't any sort of regular capital improvement budget committed to the park. The $30,000 that were allocated this year were entirely new money.
So 30,000 we had.
That's a
30,000.
different line item. And
So what is, okay, so
So I
then,
see
then
park
what is
equipment, capital
four?
improvements.
That's new,
450.
Up to,
Okay, that's, so
72.
we're, okay, so this 30,000,
450.
That's what we,
72.
that's where it only has
452,
3,000 at
okay,
the
yeah.
end of September, but that's where we bought, for example, the pool cover that I believe was about 17,000,
Right.
18,000, Rob.
Right.
So that,
So we're using that fund for the DCED grant? Is that-
well, that's what originally we had planned to do, but you may recall that we now
Right.
have fully matched a grant with a grant, so we
Right.
don't really have a match
There you go.
anymore for that. So I mean, there's, up to 15,000 is what the Shade Tree Commission requested in the,
Not only
Capital
are we
improvement up
paving a
here.
million miles of
so
road,
where are you getting, we
1.2.
mentioned a number
it's-
around six
Right.
grand
So-
that you thought was left?
add 18,000 to this number right here.
$18,000 to
And
what
some
number?
change, the three
3,500 for the concession stand? No. Or
No.
capital improvements?
Yes, so that were the little pieces of equipment that we bought for the parklets, the bouncy horses and the teacups there.
Came out of this budget?
That is what that is right there.
That's all we've spent
But then, we bought the cover
for 17.
for
So we're
17,
20,
something.
which means we have,
8,000 left.
well,
There's your
funny
seven.
about that, one of those things is $8,000, right?
Sure, we can buy new play plates. We can
Okay,
do that.
so,
Why,
We can always do
can
that.
I ask, we redo the bocce
Sure.
court?
okay, could you say that again, Alice?
I'd like to know how much it would cost to redo the bocce court that is down there and do something to add to the adult section of the park, being as we've taken out tennis courts and what have you. The bocce court is sitting down there, sort of mapped out. How much would it cost to redo that?
I don't think anyone here would be prepared to say.
It's a minimal cost.
It's minimal, and that's something that that the Public Works would do.
Sure.
Okay, so there's no capital improvement.
No.
Okay,
Maintenance.
all right, so I'm not sure if you heard that, Alice, but,
The public work, if you want to know what the minimum.
right, that it could be, that is something that Public Works can do internal, and there's no capital budget required. So basically, it sounds like we're taking on a number of to-do things for the park coming into 2020, our to-do list.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think I mean.
So-
Drawing down
I don't even know how to spell bocce, but somebody over there does. All right, so going back to this, it looks as though we have about $8,000
and then Linwood is 50,
in the 2019 budget.
375.
And guys, is there anything else that has claim on that approximate $8,000?
Not that I can think of, can you think of it?
Okay, so then we could pass by the rec board their thoughts about that specific piece that takes a smaller footprint that,
We sure
yes,
You had mentioned that you were looking at another bouncy or something else for Noble,
For Linwood,
For
because it
Linwood.
broke.
because it broke. Is that part of the 8,000, potentially?
Well, it would be, but they're like $600,
There you go.
so
okay. So,
not a big ticket item, and also it doesn't matter if it won't fit. So.
okay, so we have agreement to run by, to allocate what's left in the 2019 budget for another piece of equipment,
Sure, yeah.
likely for Linwood because of space and it's going to have the new surface.
Right.
Okay, how does that meet with at least part of your,
And nothing for Noble, just.
not out of 2019, let's take
Well,
up 2020.
Well, there are
I-
some things.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
the
already.
equipment that we purchased already.
Right,
would be-
so basically, they may not be the pieces that you chose personally, but we have spent how much money?
$3,500.
Total of $3,500 that the Parks and Rec,
The recreation board.
the Recreation
Yeah,
Board
That is the name of it.
selected earlier in the year. So we've put $3,500 into new equipment in the 2019 budget, and we are committing to take the balance, the 8,000 that's left, and adding additional equipment that the Parks Committee,
The recreation board.
I'm sorry.
Technically, parks are included in shade trees, but it's a weird distinction.
Okay, all right, so recreation, so we're talking recreation.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so for
Well,
2019.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Will the rec board make a recommendation about all of the changes from all the budget and everything that's here? Because when we ask them to organize all this, work with you on the specs, and can you just give us a comprehensive view of all the wonderful things that are gonna happen in our parks next year?
Out of the 2019
Out of the
budget.
2019 budget.
Right, okay, so, yes, let's
Okay.
do that. Does
That way we all
does
have
that
a
work?
nice list, we have a printout or whatever it is on the next meeting.
And you have a preference, you pick
Could that
some
happen
stuff,
tonight?
which, so we'll ask them about that. Now,
I-
going
yes, I will
into
do that.
2020
handle that.
budget, it appears that we have $7,000 put aside.
Just for pure park equipment. Yep.
Okay. Does that amount in our 2020 budget sound like enough for you, Marcia, that is strictly earmarked for new park equipment? Here,
So you're gonna go piece Neville Park instead of doing one play gym?
I don't know what we're gonna do, because we have a recreation board, which I believe you're on, is that correct?
I thought so, but
No,
Yeah.
No, you're
she was appointed the Parks and Rec Committee person as a council
Okay.
committee.
There's 4 seats open now if you'd like to be.
Yeah, that's an option.
yeah, maybe I can get things done that way. See
Right.
that if I'm not on council, I can get that going.
See?
So, at this juncture, we're talking about the amount of money. Because we don't, and we can come to the next meeting. So basically, we're having a workshop here to say, what do we think about this specific line item for 2020? We've already said there's $8,000 more. We're gonna have the rec board, blah, 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 come and report. We're going to show them what your recommendation is. And we'll have them come back and tell us about 2019. What's gonna happen in 2020 using up the 2019 budget. Is that correct? Have I said that correctly? Okay.
That sounds
So
good.
now what we want to talk about is the 2020 park equipment capital improvement. We have, at this moment in time, we have
No, it's a general fund line item. I'm sorry.
$7,000 in that budget. So far this year, the 3,400 that we have taken out of the 454.75, 75, park equipment capital improvement, it had a budget of $3,000 in 2019, and it looks like we have consumed 3,419.
I would have to look at the actual
sorry.
line item. That's the way that has been used. Oh, good Lord. This is one of those things that I've been trying to piece out of the
Okay, so,
old budget. Rob, do you have any, did you buy a lawnmower this year or something?
would that have been for park equipment?
No, not sure.
Did you buy
What's
any
a weed
sort of?
whackers? Yeah.
Weed, okay, so
All right,
perhaps,
so
that was the equipment purchase for the park.
what was that?
Weed whackers.
That many?
About 3 weed whackers, yeah.
So what do they cost?
I'd have to actually look at the line item. I don't have it in front of me.
That's all right, I'm sorry we're, we
No,
don't
that's
need to
okay.
do that.
I apologize. I would have come prepared. I just didn't know.
Okay, so we believe that the 3419 really has to do with equipment for maintaining the park.
Yeah,
And that is not playground equipment.
yeah. The playground equipment definitely came out of the line item that
The
had
capital-
30,000. Yes,
okay.
which was new last
Okay,
year.
okay,
for
I
sure.
got it, we got it.
So
All right, all right.
I would have to look and see, but I think that that's mostly been maintenance equipment for the park.
All right, wait a minute, so I get really confused here when I'm looking at 452.72.
Purchase some stuff.
Oh, what did you do for the shelter?
When we put some new composite
There you go. That's probably what it
I'm not sure
is.
if you took it.
Okay,
When we took
so-
about that.
So, Shade Tree Commission, this $17,000, is that park? I mean, I'm trying to understand the difference between recreation and parks. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so, oh my, how can I say this? Because there was a very small amount budgeted, if anything at all, for the parks and recreation areas. That's why that line item that had 30,000 in it, I know it ends in 72, 452, 72 perhaps? We opened that last year. It's just a new investment into our parks and recreation areas. Because perhaps in the revolving door of managers, there has been inconsistency in how things were budgeted in specific line items.
Okay,
I am not 100% sure why those two are split up, but my best guess is that that has
so we
been
have
equipment
recreation.
for
So
maintaining the
then the
parks.
shade tree, the shade tree budget should be under parks, right? Not under recreation.
I think we should probably just merge those two sections at this point, but, I mean, oh, that's, yeah. We can just flip-flop those line items, maybe.
What's that?
What line item?
Yeah, I mean, I think if
What
we're
line is the
saying
shade
parks.
tree?
Okay,
Well,
so
shade
it's
tree is a totally
452
different
point-
section.
Well, but your note here is that a shade tree request for park tree maintenance.
I think,
And that's 452.72, but if you look at the header, that's recreation. So to me, that line item is capital improvements for recreation, which would be all
that is
this
a fair
playground.
point. I think that previously the parks capital improvements line item has mostly been used for equipment for maintaining the parks, and so therefore.
Recreation, so no.
We
So
were right.
basically, if we're going to keep these headers and these account numbers,
Mhm.
then capital
It would make
improvements
sense to
here,
move that there.
yeah, so the whole 17,000 was for the shade tree?
15,
15,
up to
okay.
15,000.
All right, so basically, let's flip this around, and we need to put 15,000 in capital, but I'm sorry, but shade tree, park tree maintenance is not capital improvement. It's like you need, it's maintenance, 45437, or it's something entirely different.
I'm just gonna look at this really quick.
If you're getting tired of this, Wayne, we can turn it off.
I don't understand why the Shade Tree Commission would be on the parks, because all
Well,
the,
that's exactly
Okay.
what we're
All the
discussing
That
right
is
now.
literally the statutory name of the commission per the state
Right,
borough code.
right.
This is called the
It is
what?
the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. That is what the state
Yes, but they are in
establishes
charge
as an
of the
existence.
shade trees and the actual parks, but not the recreation inside of the parks.
Which,
Okay.
you know what, it just got stuck there because,
Well, that's
oh,
fine.
I see what
Because you're a
happened
tree
here
city.
is-
Okay.
is-
Pardon?
you're a tree city, but not all the trees are in the park.
Right,
Well, there's a separate shade tree health maintenance, 455.
That is totally
That's
yeah,
different
those
from
are the
park
street
maintenance.
trees.
Right.
I see what happened here, which is that the capital improvements line item in the first draft just had a general $10,000 open, let's find
Okay.
something to spend $10,000 on. I probably just plonked the
so-
17,000 in there because it,
So what they're
made sense
asking
at the
for
time.
the tree maintenance is up to 15,000, and which line item under parks should that be parked into?
None of the above.
yeah, I mean, okay, maybe we open a new line item because there is not a dedicated, just general, there's maintenance supplies, there's maintenance repair services. I guess we could bump that up, but then that line item becomes unnaturally inflated,
Right,
which is probably why, at the moment that I was sitting in front of the spreadsheet, I made the decision to put 17,000 into
and it's the
452.72,
wrong, not the right place for
so that it wouldn't be
it, right.
artificially
But
inflating
it's not a
another
capital
line item.
improvement either,
It's not.
so,
However, it's tough to say because we're not gonna have a $15,000 Hail Mary park tree expense every single year either, so I mean,
so it's still better under maintenance.
yeah.
one of the two maintenance items in parks.
I guess repairs, services would be my recommendation.
Okay, so what we're gonna ask
Sorry to steal your budget.
is, okay, so that one has 9,000 in it, we need to add 15,000, right?
Yes, but also, how much do we want to allocate for recreation capital?
All right, so
expenses in
that's
addition
where
to
we're
the
gonna go
25?
next. So we have park equipment,
May I ask, where would any go for the improvement at the stage area? They could use some more over there.
We're,
That's maintenance.
yeah, that would be maintenance and repairs of the parks.
maintenance repair service.
Okay, so, good point, Alice, I'm trying to move the the things that will really be capital improvements to the parks. So that's what I want to get moved next. So,
Okay.
okay, and then we'll address your question. So we're going to move the 15,000 from 4572 to 454.37.
37,
Okay.
yes.
That will leave us with 2,000 in that capital improvement, but then we're gonna take the 7,000, which I believe you have allocated for actual recreation, or is this allocated for something
I
else?
see, yes, I see what I did. In the first draft, I was trying to streamline the equipment purchases, so they did not end up in park equipment capital improvements. So, new
But that's-
lawnmower 2020 is 454.26.
Minor equipment? Okay, so.
So I think now that we've talked about this for a second, I'm seeing this 5,000 that was budgeted every year for park equipment, capital improvements, which probably should have ended up in recreation because it would have made more sense, but this
Okay.
is the budget.
So
that we inherited.
454.75.
That 5,000 and then the 7 that's been spent and whatnot, the logic of that has been, this is about how much the house tour raises, and so therefore it gets budgeted there. I think in
So
general,
then it's capital improvements. Okay.
it doesn't make sense.
Recreation, from what I'm
Historically.
understanding, we need to move that to recreation capital improvements. Right?
With what?
Yes, with the caveat of, so with the house tour stuff, we do the budget in November. We find out how much comes in for that same calendar year, later in December, after the budget
I
has
get
already
that.
been advertised. and
I'm
approved.
just looking
So
for the right
what
account.
we need to do probably to make it clear that the funds that are raised in the house tour, that should probably have its own line item, whether it's in recreation or parks, we can
Yes.
open another in recreation, but we should be setting it retroactive to, so, in 2020, we budget what was raised in 2018, because that's a real number we can actually look at and
House
see.
tour funds for park
and do
capital improvements. or
Yeah,
something.
so,
I
yes.
thought you were trying to keep these accounts aligned with the state.
You can, essentially, what we would do there would be 452.725, because as long as it's, the .72 suffix is capital improvements, and you can drill down into that as
Okay,
much
so
as you
you're
want. saying
saying what you think we need to do. So essentially, we'll end up with capital improvements at 452.72. If we move, it's gonna have $2,000 in its budget. I think we
Yes.
lost her.
Okay, I will stand up. Thank you. This guy.
Okay.
We got you, Alice.
I'll just check it somehow, I don't know. Right.
Okay, so we will have, at this juncture, before, unless there are any changes, 452.72 will end up with $2,000 in its budget. And then if we add 452.725,
Yeah.
that is going to be, that's gonna be parks, capital improvement.
Recreation
Recreation. I'm
fundraising,
not-
capital
yes,
improvement.
Yeah, recreation fundraising,
That's, you have to, that's the old version. It's a
okay, capital improvement.
So I guess that will move up.
And so we are going to,
We don't even know what it's for.
pardon?
Okay. So, Rob, you're saying that you think that, I'm so sorry, that the 3,500 that was spent in this line item this year, which we will go back and check, we were talking about park equipment, capital improvements, was probably for the weed whackers and the materials you use to renovate the shelters. Yes,
I think
this right here. That's what you
Okay.
think.
So we're gonna look into that. All right, so are you saying that that 7,000 is above, up, or were you trying to combine the two things? Or should the whole 7,000,
Also, it's,
Five
That's
thousand, where do you see
that's-
7,000?
I see.
I'm looking at 454.75,
is that,
and I'm seeing a proposed budget of $7,000.
oh, good lord, which
I have a
edition have we
proposed
been
budget
looking
of
at this
5,000.
whole time?
Am I looking at the wrong budget?
Whichever one has 17,000 in it is
Last
the
one we
most
got.
recent one.
Right, that's the
Great.
one that Marcia
Okay.
handed me
That one is
right
old
here.
then.
Got the old one.
You do.
Okay.
You got 5,000 on yours, you got the old one.
Yeah, I've got the old one.
You got the old one.
Okay,
That is,
So
the-
Martha's
yes, that
the
is
only
the
one
new
that's
one,
up to
because
date
it also
there.
has 8,000 in the senior dinner. And
Right.
that was typoed from last time.
right. Okay, so we have $7,000 in that. Is that all, okay, does that have to be divided up because we are gonna need some actual park equipment capital improvement as opposed to recreation capital improvement?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
how much needs to stay in this account?
Well,
I
I mean,
probably
if
have-
Alice
I
is
think
focused,
5,000.
you probably, so he probably requested 5,000.
Yeah.
okay,
So
so,
keep
and
5,000 in that.
Alice is asking about,
The
what's this,
bandstand,
the bandstand, the amphitheater?
Well, that's, part of this would go into the facade of the stage and the facade of the big shelters.
So is $5,000
Rotary
enough for
shelters was
that?
done.
That was your
Okay.
budget request originally.
So,
Did
So-
you say that you had the wood for the stage already?
We got some of it, yeah. Some of it for the, not for the stage, for the big shelter.
okay,
Yeah.
so these are for shelter and
And-
stage
Facade.
facades. Okay, so we already have that planned. So then $2,000,
See, this is what I was looking for right here.
okay, so it appears to me in our
Just
income,
send the other
do
one.
we line item
The house tour
the
stuff?
house tour?
Yes,
Okay.
that is at the very bottom of recreation fees, fundraising, recreation, the doggy paddle also goes into there.
Park and community event, pool passes, senior dinner, fundraising, recreation, actual,
That's still current. I haven't changed that.
so, okay, I know this is actually gonna have a numbers impact, but that says we have to put 7,000.
Which is what
Yes, I see
the
that
logic
now.
was for that line item. I mean, we're gonna bump it up by 5,000. What's the difference? You know, we added 80,000 at the last workshop, so.
So then, this recreation fundraising capital is gonna have 7,000 in it.
Yes,
Okay, and are we going to leave the
5.
general
to
capital
2, yeah.
improvements, 452.72?
Ooh, okay.
That one will have $2,000 in it.
Or we
When-
can up it if we want. I mean, that's kind of just, how much more is the borough putting in the calendar year in addition to the rec fundraising? If we were recording the grant drawdown, that would save $375,000. However, because it's such a large expense, it's being
Right,
recorded in
but
capital projects.
none of that grant has to do with playground equipment, which is Marcia's thing.
No, it's just the
The
playground
surface,
surfaces.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, it looks like the way it stands and the way we're gonna readjust this is that there will be $9,000 available for recreation equipment
Mhm.
over and above what we have for all the other good things in the grant, the
Yes.
surfaces and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So, Marcia, what do you think?
I at least ordered the top for Linwood Park.
So basically what we're saying is for this year, we're going to draw down, what we have is about $8,000. And you're making a recommendation for, actually, I'm suggesting we go with the one that's a little bit smaller that we were looking at, that's a few dollars more. Run it by
Yeah.
Parks. Okay, so what we're saying is, going into 2020, we're reserving $9,000 for additional recreation equipment,
So as
play
it,
equipment,
as it stands now.
as it stands now.
Linwood will be in good shape out of current budget.
Yes,
Linwood will be in current shape with new equipment, new play surface, other things in grading and the things that you do in general improvement. On top of all that, there's now an additional $9,000 that is on top of the new equipment that you've already bought for the main park.
For, no, part.
No.
You said you also bought the merry-go-round for the main
That
park.
was what was requested when I spoke to Mary from the rec.
Okay, so.
okay, so
the-
that has not been purchased yet.
So that has not been purchased, but the recommendation from the rec board from that $9,000 to start will be that merry-go-round, which you said is about $3,500, which I thought you said,
Like four, it's like
okay, let's say
It's
4.
fine.
So that means there'll be an additional, so there'll be new equipment at Linwood, some new equipment that's already been purchased at Noble. There is some new equipment that's being selected for the main park. And on top of all that, the new play surfaces at the main park and at Noble, and at Linwood.
Yep.
On top of all that, there'll still be another $5,000 for which some other recommendation can be drawn for wherever it may be.
Yeah,
That's left
that's a
over
good
19,
summary.
plus the 2020 budget. The 5,000.
No, the 5,000 is what is now,
And say,
all that's left in the 2020 budget. Everything else has been
That's-
allocated.
Yeah, he's good, yeah.
that's, you know,
Well, I didn't,
I think that What's
it's
been offered
possible,
here, I
that's
think
a
it's
whole
surprising.
other issue.
Yeah.
So what is being taken up right now is whether that additional equipment, that budget for 2020, we've got it in 2020 because we have this on sale till the end of the year, whether that can be leveraged. But it sounds as though, okay, we've already had our November meeting, right, Wayne?
yes.
For the
And so the
which
next
is
meeting,
today.
will there be one in December or no?
Yeah,
Okay, and it's early in the month, so maybe we look at taking up the request for 2020 and then see if we can negotiate something
Mhm.
where we can,
So if the rec board selects that $5,000 encumbrance, they pick what they want now, and it gets,
they can get it at the end of the year.
get the end of the year
special.
clearance price.
Yeah.
So, but it
Yeah.
sounds as though, if we're looking at something like that, we're probably gonna need $3,000 or $4,000 more. If we're looking at a piece of equipment like the one you'd like to see us get.
5,000 is not enough. to
Right,
do
these
that.
are like, they're on sale, the things that she's looking at are about $8,000.
Okay, but so I'm sorry. So we're talking about 2020 now, or we're still talking about 2019?
No, we are
Okay.
talking about in addition to what we're recommending for 2019,
Okay.
to use up that $8,000 that
On
we have.
that.
Well, there's the smaller one.
Something similar to that.
Yes,
Keep going.
something like
It's a
that.
tiny bit smaller, and it's
Yep.
about the same price. It's 8,000.
Right, well, you know, it's certainly not the end of the world if we spend $500 more dollars.
Right.
It won't be the
But
first time
the
it's
point
happened.
being though is, so there's $5,000 that's not allocated in the 2020 budget. If we were to somehow pre-encumber that in 2019 to take advantage of
Of the
these
sale.
sale prices, is what she's saying. So we're back to the same thing.
Well, we
the-
should find out if we can do that first.
Well, Ingrid, you might, a lot of these,
I'm sure
they'll
they'll
let
work
you do
with
it the
us.
first of the year.
I'm sure they'll work with
I mean,
us.
it's Jeffrey, they put the other park. and-
Right.
And the main
So-
park was, who did that.
So this company we've bought from this company before,
Yes.
Okay.
and if you've got a bigger thing, say,
If
okay.
you put the invoice, if you put the PO through on the 28th, they're not gonna get you an invoice until the first
And they'll
meeting.
honor the price, yeah.
I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure
Okay.
it's
I'm sure that they just wanna make the sale.
I'm sure
Right.
they
Right.
will.
So,
So the point is, the rec board is going to be asked to organize everything that we've just said, put it back to us, plus make a recommendation of what can they get for $5,000, because it's not, so my question to you, Marcia, is, let's say $8,000 were found.
so we need to, if we were gonna put another $3,000,
Let's just walk me through this.
okay,
What is that piece of what is that thing, where is that thing going to go?
so, go ahead.
One in Linwood Park.
Linwood's full.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Well, this one, that's the 2019 we're talking about for Linwood. And you'd like to see, if I understand what you're saying, you'd like to see one just like this in the other park.
So,
Okay?
and what has already, so nothing has already been bought for
No.
Noble?
No, we bought $3,500 worth of equipment. for
Right,
Noble.
so there's already equipment that has been bought for Noble that was encumbered in August or whatever it was. That was bought earlier this year. So what I'm saying is, given that, and there's already some existing equipment in Noble,
Uh-huh.
so that is 32 by 30 if I
No,
had to
this one, we
make
made it, this one is a little bit smaller.
Let's say 20 by 20.
Okay, it's a little.
The point is still, where are we gonna put it? Is there room? You know what I'm saying, Marcia, does that make sense? Like, so there's already new equipment going into, so Linwood is full, right? No room at the end. Noble may have some space. My question is there space of that space to actually put in an $8,000 piece of jungle gym? I don't know that there is, because it's not a huge space.
It's a small one.
You have to take something out.
Yeah.
You probably have to take some out. So that's what I'm saying. So maybe it's not about buying that particular model, that it's back to the rec board to say, you know, you have about $5,000 to work with. Here we have a fire sale going on from our preferred vendor. Is there something that you guys can select that will fit into the character of the Linwood Park,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's, yeah.
You know what, there's some pretty cool stuff here.
Oh, so you can go down
It's
that
on
rabbit
sale.
hole all day.
Yeah. Okay,
That's what we
so
were
it
doing.
isn't so much that you're like really set on this specific type of equipment, just so that it's something.
Right.
Okay, all right, so then if we leave the budget as it is, what you're saying is, let's see if we can leverage something using this end of year sale,
Sure, yeah, we
To
can
use
definitely do that.
the budget. Okay. Does that get at what you want?
and that's why I wanted to get this months ago, or get straightened out, that, you know.
We're here now, though.
Which
When they put it
one,
on sale then.
Right.
which was, that was in seventh spring when I brought it back.
Oh.
Well, we're here now, and the good
Well,
news
that's
is,
just
we've
it.
got a good
So-
plan.
I thought it
So,
was the end of the year.
so how is this being conveyed to the rec board, all
Oh, I
these,
see, yeah,
these
this
moving
is
pieces?
why, this is.
Are
You want your book back?
You're
I
conveying all this
will
to the rec?
send an
Okay.
email tomorrow,
What?
which could be in 10 hours or in 2 hours and 2 minutes, really, if we're counting midnight.
But we're all on
He
a
asked
same.
me, how are we gonna talk to the rec board? And I said, I'll send an email, or we can just tell Wayne. Wayne?
No, you're gonna send an
I'm
email.
like-
I'm gonna stop,
Probably
that was
gonna
a
have to
joke.
go.
That was not
snoring over there.
sincere.
Where you come from a 4-1 vote on a proposed budget to micromanaging a budget you don't have, haven't done anything for the last 20 years, now you gotta go from 0 to
They
100?
built that new playground, that was,
All right,
When they did
all right.
Listen.
Does anybody on council have anything else?
I wanted to ask about the fencing that we were talking about down there at the main park.
Yeah, please don't do chain link fences, please. Our kids don't need to be in
Okay.
Yeah, no,
prison.
we're not,
He's
no.
matching the same style of fence that's up there now, so wouldn't with the, yeah, it's the same.
Okay, so is that what Alice was saying, is she doesn't want chain link fence?
At one of the prior meetings, it came up that a black chain link fence was gonna go around that park down
I
there.
meant no.
That was what was said in the July meeting, yeah. Yeah, Alice and I had a conversation about it, we were like, what
Okay.
in the world?
So,
No chain link,
we are assured that that's not gonna
the main
happen.
park.
No,
Okay,
I took the contractor down there and told him, maybe price to match the existing fence all the way around. The only place there might be
So,
an equipment gate.
given where we're
It's not gonna
at,
be wooden. It'll be
you wanna
something
leave your
big.
vote as a no for advertising the budget? Okay, all right, meeting adjourned.
We're done. Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, thank you, see you all tomorrow.